Hi there, welcome back to the Kenny Veach M Cave Mystery. Today I want to share with you some very important unanswered questions from the eyes of Jeff Clark. Now Jeff was going to post them in the comments, but I thought not many people will probably read it. So if I do it as a video, people will see it much clearer and easier. Anyone in general, if you do have answers to these questions, let me know all your thoughts down below under this video in the comment section. Down below you'll also find a pinned comment by me with some additional links if you wish to check them out. Top right corner of the screen where the eye symbol is, if you click on that you'll find the recent videos by me which covered back-to-back breaking news of human remains being found and identified. For more context, check those videos out when you do have time. At this moment though, welcome to those that are currently here in this live premiere. Along with these questions, let me know your thoughts in the live chat as we do go along today. And I'll try my best to answer these questions from Jeff Clark. Depending how specific they are or how detailed, it might take me some time to answer. Granted, I've not covered the Kenny Veach case in certain areas for some time, so to recall it all and the different theories proposed along the way by me, I'll have to take that into consideration, okay? I'm not saying that this video is going to be smooth or polished. It could be very rough and rugged, but this is what conversations and discussions are all about. Of course, if people do have refined answers, they're always welcome. The purpose of Jeff Clark's questions are so they can be answered and maybe create a form of clarity, maybe a new direction or lead within the case. And more so, Jeff Clark's asking anyone. He's not just directly asking me with these questions, it's anyone can answer them. I'll try my best to respond back today, okay? So I think with that all being said and done, let's just get straight into the questions right now. So there appears to be a few comments here, a few questions. We'll get to them shortly. Start with the first one. Hopefully you can see the screen. If not, don't worry, I'm just going to read it out to you. The first question by Jeff Clark, number 1. Why bring a cell phone along on the final hike at all? So some of you may be wondering what this is in response to. It's to do with Kenny Veach. I'll provide to you a little bit of context behind why Jeff Clark is questioning it, okay? So, the original story, one of the narratives is Kenny Veach went out there to end his life. And he dropped his phone near to the mine shaft to prevent anyone from tracking him down. If Kenny was in possession of his phone as he passed away, they might be able to track it to the location of his body, his remains. Kenny supposedly didn't want that. That narrative was driven by the ex-girlfriend Sharon Pilgrim that said he may have committed suicide out there. Okay, with Kenny's state of mind from the past, and also re-quoting what Kenny said in the past about if he was to end his life out there, he would go somewhere where no one can find him, okay? So, as example, if you're going to take an item with you that could trace your location, you would want to dispose of it if you don't want to be found. If that's the mindset Kenny had at the time, well, it makes sense why he dropped it behind. But there is a big but. And it ties in with Jeff Clark's question here, and even mine in the past, because I was one of the first ones, or one of the second ones to question it in the past. Why take your phone in the first place? What purpose does it really serve, okay? If Kenny Veach had a camcorder or just a normal camera, right, as we saw in his second hike, and supposedly he took one on his final hike, which Sharon Pilgrim contradicted herself on about saying he didn't. And then she said, well, there's one camera missing, so he must have taken it with him, right? If he takes items like that with him on his hike, then what purpose is the phone? Why take the phone in the first place? Kenny Veach on the day, 10th of November 2014, at about 6 a.m. in the morning, sent, I believe, a text message to Sharon Pilgrim about, right, I'm heading out for the day, just for that acknowledgement. Nothing out of the ordinary or suspicious about the text message. And then he goes out on his final hike to Jermay Canyon, to the mine shaft. He takes his phone with him. That doesn't sound like what a suicidal person would do. They would leave their items behind because they have no purpose for them. There's no use of them on the hike, and they're not intending on returning back, so why take unnecessary weight and items with you, right? Unless they were genuinely going out on a hike and they took items with them for either protection, for survival, food, water, maybe as a form of contact if Kenny needed to call someone if he was at the highway or he was somewhat stranded somewhere, right? So I'd understand that, but the original narrative is Kenny, suicidal, doesn't want to be found, but takes a phone with him anyway, which then leads to search and rescue, tracking him down out in the desert area and at least up to the mine shaft. Granted, his body or himself hasn't been found yet, right? Whether he's in the desert or not, but he was still tracked there. Unless the only other option is Kenny Veach did take the phone out there on purpose as a means of being traced and tracked up to a certain point as proof and evidence to say he did go out there, and then Kenny left the area and went elsewhere in a different direction or got picked up by someone and started a new life. So there's evidence here and there to point in a different direction, the wrong place. There's different ways of looking at it. But if we are basically revolving around the original narrative of ending one's life, there's no point taking a phone with you in the first place because it's not like you're going to be using it, are you? It's not even a tool that you would use to end your life. A firearm, well, that could be used, or it could be used for protection, depending. You get what I'm saying? But maybe Jeff Clark's original question is very open-ended just because it makes sense, right? Like, if you look at it in a holistic way, right? Suicide or not, even just going out there hiking, what is the point of having a phone if there's no cell phone reception, right? All I can say is if he was on the highway, he broke down, he needed to be picked up, needed a recovery service, that's all I could think of. But if you're out in the desert, there's not much cell phone reception. You can't really do much with the phone. Unless it was used in the past when he got stranded and injured, then I would understand. So, Jeff Clark, just feel free to elaborate. When you ask the question about the cell phone, why bring it on the hike at all? Are you basing that question on Kenny supposedly being suicidal and taking it and dropping it off at the mine shaft to avoid being tracked? And Jeff, are you saying that, well, what's the point of taking it in the first place if you don't want to be traced into the desert? Leave it at home. I understand. I agree. Or are you, Jeff Clark, just talking in general? Why would any hiker, why would Kenny specifically, simply hiking out there, take a phone when there's not much use or purpose of it? Let me know which route you were questioning, number 1 or 2. Now, question number 2, were coins found with the phone because they were dragged out whilst frantically trying to call for help? That question. So I guess this ties on with the phone, the cell phone, calling for help. But isn't it true that you wouldn't be able to call for help if you were near to the mine shaft because there's no reception? Correct me if I'm wrong. I've not really seen anyone else make calls. Though I did see SB test his radio out at some point in the past in the area, but then again, that's different to a phone. So yes, in terms of the context of Jeff Clark's question originally, by search and rescue, 22nd of November 2014, search and rescue did find Kenny's phone and coins, change, near to the mine shaft, right? It was said, like by the girlfriend and just news articles and common sense from what we've seen in photos, Kenny Veach with his cargo trousers and deep pockets, change, coins would be in those pockets and they'd be down at the bottom, quite a bit of depth, maybe with the phone as well. That would mean you'd have to purposely reach in and pull whatever out, right? And maybe it's easier to reach in and pull a phone out, but as As for coins, well, you got to go to a bit more effort there in trying to grab them all, right? I mean, how many coins were there? As you know, if you got a couple of coins or so, about 5, 6 or more, trying to handle them all, you might not pull them out all in one handful. You might have to pull your hand back in and then back out. So if that was the case, it's like manual, okay? It's done with intent. And it's trying to understand, from at least what Jeff Clark is questioning, did Kenny Veach take his phone and coins out of his trouser pockets by choice because he didn't want to be found? Or as a clue, a marker? Or was he just in a rush? Was it accidental in a way? I don't know if Jeff Clark's question about what condition was the phone in, if it's not mentioned on this screen, I'll add it in later, okay? So were the coins found with the phone because they were dragged out of the pocket whilst frantically trying to call for help? Was Kenny Veach in danger at the time? At least from my opinion or perspective, because we unfortunately don't know what state the phone was in, whether it was a cracked screen, stamped on, or gently placed on the ground, and we don't know the condition of the coins. Were they gently placed? Were they scattered? They were near to the mine shaft. It makes you think, like, with a phone, it could accidentally fall out depending what pocket it's in, and if the person's bent over, squatting, it could slip out. It has happened. It does happen in life with people. It depends how deep the pockets are. The deeper the pockets, the less likely it will fall out, right? But when it comes to the loose change, the coins, they're probably going to be in deep pockets and individual coins. So Kenny would have to reach in and pull them out. But if the phone was in the same pocket as the coins, that could explain as to why both were pulled out and were at the side of the mine shaft. If you are rushing, like how Jeff Clark mentions, if Kenny Veach was panicking or in danger for some reason, or his position was compromised, and he had to reach for his phone because he needed to be rescued or he needed to contact someone, whilst putting your hand in the pocket, you could just grab whatever and pull it out, which causes some change and coins to fall out too. I understand. My only point would be, why would Kenny Veach be frantically fumbling around with his hands and in supposed danger when, if you exclude Kenny Veach, 90% of all hikers that have gone to the mine shaft have simply stood there. It's been okay. They've looked around. Some have gone inside of the mine shaft. Others have just walked past and not much happened. So it's okay for the 90% of people, but Kenny Veach, on that one occasion, it went wrong. Now, if that really was the case, why the mine shaft? Why in that area? Why not further on where those caves are? The keyhole one, the one Kenny Veach was scared of, where it's more suspicious and it's more of a hot spot. Was somebody waiting for Kenny at the mine shaft, or was there some kind of military intervention from above, right? Some people in the past mentioned as a theory that maybe Kenny Veach possibly left the items there as a call for help or something, if he was ordered to surrender, but he left some items behind. But how are we supposed to infer from that, just because he's left a phone or coins on the ground? We're not mind readers, right? So I don't think that's what Kenny had in mind. Obviously, you know that my ideas are Kenny placed the items there to make it seem like he's out in the desert when he's probably not, as some of the evidence suggest, right? But if Kenny was genuinely out there trying to hike, let's just put it that way, would that be the area for danger when all the other hikers have been okay? I know, it could be wrong place, wrong time, something happened, but look at it this way. If Kenny had to defend himself, would he really be pulling out his phone, his coins, frantically, primarily? No, he's got his firearm. You'd think he pulls that out before the phone and then shoots whatever or fires a warning shot, right? And If there was some kind of animal attack, if we want to call it like that, or anything that involves Kenny being hurt by someone or something, surely there would be like some kind of DNA or traces behind, or some kind of scent. And yet it came to an abrupt end. Unless that's because Kenny Veach was reported missing too late, 8 days later. Maybe if Kenny Veach was reported missing on the same day or the day later, just maybe then, if search and rescue got involved quicker, they might have found more, or the scent could have gone on further or in a different direction, maybe. But I do think that if Kenny was in danger for whatever reason, he would probably be grabbing his firearm before anything else, right? Obviously, the condition of the phone would put things into perspective. I mean, how hard is the ground surface up there? I mean, it's rocky, right? And even on the wooden board near the mine shaft, it's a bit of a hard surface. So if Kenny did frantically fumble about and the phone was smashed, you could suggest, well, Kenny must have threw it on the ground or dropped it from a height accidentally as he was fumbling about. But has he ever done that in the past? Was he clumsy with his camera and tripod on his hike? Not from the looks of it. You could say, well, he was calm there. No, not really. Because he seemed a bit panicky at times, and his voice and tone, but he still managed to hold the camera somewhat steady. It didn't break. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Question number 3, why not mention any of the names of the landmarks along the loop hike route? That's a fair question. I mentioned that as well in the previous videos. So Kenny Veach did reference some named locations, but got them wrong. So I guess Sheep Peak, Kenny named as Gas Peak. That's incorrect. Gas Peak is further back, nowhere near the area Kenny hiked in, right? So Kenny might have hiked around Gas Peak, which is more of a touristy area compared to the likes of here, Sheep Range, right? So was it just a simple mistake? I mean, yeah. You can make mistakes, but then not mentioning the names of the key locations, such as where Kenny said, oh, I've got to go over that ridge, got to go up and over there. He's talking about Wild Horse Pass. Why has he not called it Wild Horse Pass? And then when he said, I've got to go down a really narrow canyon and it goes in and out and there's a few drops. That's Picture Canyon. Why didn't Kenny Veach call it that? When Kenny was going and parking on the road, he didn't call it Joe May Road. The canyon he was going up to the mine shaft, he didn't call that Joe May Canyon. All these named locations, and yet Kenny did not ever mention them in his video, nor did he mention them in his unreleased footage when talking about his hike afterwards, once he made it back to his vehicle, right? Not once did he make accurate references or named the locations. I mean, you've seen me. I've made references to the names of these different locations, and I've looked at the map, just like how Kenny did, supposedly, in the past. So how come I can name the locations and I'm not even from the area, yet Kenny Veach, long-distance hiker, very experienced, done it for many years, and yet he can't name the correct places, and he doesn't even know the names of some. It doesn't say a lot about him, does it? And some people could get triggered and say, well, that seems like a personal attack. That's rude. But, you know, it's a valid observation. If you're present and you're trying to prove to the general public what you found, such as the M Cave, you've gone out there to record it as proof, to relocate it, right? You say it's a vast desert. Okay, are they excuses because you just don't know the name of the location? You say you've been out there multiple times, because take in mind, Kenny Veach has been out there at least 3 times, maybe more in the past, right? After all those times out there, why does he not know the names of the locations? And as well, the hike route, and I'll do this as a separate video, the hike route, what Kenny did on his second one and what is assumed to be his final one too, same route. Surely he would know it by now, because the very first time he supposedly went out there and did the hike, he was able to do it. And he knew the distance, he knew the time it would take. So why on his second hike in his unreleased MK footage, why did Kenny Veach at the end of his video say, I need to look at my map afterwards to check the distance or the time? if you've already done the hike, you would already know how long it takes. So that doesn't make sense either. So it's as if you looked at it very roughly, and like with the contradictions about Kenny saying you can go spelunking in the area, yet there's no areas to explore. It's as if Kenny Veach is trying to convince us that he has been out there in Geogaphical Canyon Sheep Range before in the past. But at the same time, how he puts himself across when talking in his hike video, it's like he's never seen the place before, right? Now, he could be confused. He might not think it's important to the public to tell people the names of the locations. But, you know, if you're willing to go out there multiple times to try and prove to people that you found the cave and where it's at, surely you should at least provide the location of it. If you want to make a big deal about it, you would put in the effort. And yet Kenny was a bit reckless and didn't really add much to the area as for the names and references. So it's quite underwhelming considering he's a seasoned, experienced hiker. Surely he would know the names of those places, right? I mean, Jeff Clark knows the names of the places. Yes, he has hiked out there, but probably not as long or as much as Kenny has in that specific area. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. But yeah, I do agree. You know, is there any possible reason as to why he didn't mention the names of the landmarks on his hike? Because he didn't think it was important to mention in his video, maybe? Because he's never been there before? It's a completely different area as to where he originally found the M cave, so misdirection. Was he not giving away the true location or name because he didn't want anyone else to find it? Is it possible that if Kenny Veach did find the M cave and record it, he would have shown it to the general public, but he wouldn't have given the name of the place? Is that a possibility? I wonder. It is weird. Now, question number 4. Why mention spelunking and tell people to go there to do it? When, as for context, there is no spelunking in the area. Other hikers can confirm that because they've been out there themselves and they did not find any caves explorable. Most, if not all, which people have looked for have been very, very shallow. You might get the odd cave which is a bit questionable, could be a cover-up, but besides that, there isn't really anything to explore out there besides the desert area and going up the peaks. So why would Kenny say that you can when you can't? Either because in between from then till now, the military have filled in caves and holes and entranceways to prevent people from getting on in, seeking the truth. That's one theory, right? My other idea is maybe Kenny was in a completely different area compared to the very first time he came across the cave. Wherever Kenny Veach was the first time round he came across the cave, maybe you can go spelunking, but as of Geogaphical Canyon, you can't, right? 2 ideas there. Now, question number 5. Why were distances cited so far off? What do you mean by that, Jeff Clark? Are you talking about the distance of Gas Peak, where it's actually miles further back compared to what Kenny was claiming as Gas Peak, which was actually Sheep Peak? Is that what you're referring to there? Or are you talking about other distance, such as Kenny not knowing how long or the distance it would take to do the hike, even though he's done it in the past, and yet he said he needs to look at the map? Is that what you're referring to? I'm not too sure. Question 6. Why did the military attempt to take that land a year after Kenny went missing, but never before? That's a very critical question. I mean, you could say it's just a very unfortunate coincidence, but it would be very coincidental, wouldn't it? That Kenny Veach supposedly finds a cave out there in the area. He talks about it online. It garners attention. He tries recording it and going out there again. Is that what caught the military's attention? Was the military secretly watching in the background somehow and realised, oh no, this guy called Kenny is onto something, exposing us, revealing a secret. We need to make sure that no one finds it. So whether that's a coincidence in Kenny going missing or not, the land takeover could be a genuine form of concern and interest in the eyes of the military, right? Kenny can go missing, military land takeover can commence, but it doesn't mean to say the military are responsible for Kenny Veach's disappearance. Kenny may have found something, or he thought he did. The military thought that Kenny found what they were hiding. Not to say that that was entirely the case, but let me just put it into other words, right? You can be out there exploring. You say that you found something, but maybe you haven't. But the response you get from others out there is a form of resistance. That can be telling signs that there is something out there which they're hiding, and because you say that you found it, that's caused them to panic, right? That's how you can get a reaction out of someone and a form of suspicion that they're hiding something. That could have happened in the Kenny Veach case. Kenny may have found something which wasn't what the military were hiding, let's just say, but there is still military-related stuff out there. So it caught the interest of the military, maybe the government, and took action by trying to take over that land, which just so happened to be the first proposal takeover of a fair portion of land and covered the whole area where Kenny Veach hiked in. Why would the military want that area specifically, right? That's why you can tie it and apply it to the Kenny Veach case. So I agree. So I would say whether Kenny actually found something related to military or not, it caught the attention of military who are actually hiding something out there. And because the land is public, the military wanted to take action. Now, the bit about beforehand, why didn't military take over the land beforehand? Why, if it is the case that there is military-related equipment or caves, entrances in that public area, which is explorable by the normal people, if things were installed and planted in the past by military on public land, why would they even do that then, the military, right? If we were applying it to the Kenny Veach case, if there is already something dark and secretive out there on public land, why would the military not be in ownership of it to begin with when placing stuff out there? You could say that, oh, well, the military aren't expecting anyone to come across it or find it. Is it really that hard to own some land out there if you're the military? Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, what can happen with developments, right? A person could purchase land and then say, right, I want to put houses on here or buildings, and find there is permission granted and it's done legally, you can do that, right? Before buying the land, you're not going to think, right, I'm going to plop a building onto here because that will like raise eyebrows and it could cause problems. Now, if you're in a position of power, you'll probably be able to do what you want or do more than what a general public person could do. But like when we think of military, right, they're going to take over somewhere. They might take over a country. Military takeover, big scale, large scale, international, or in their own country, whatever. Could just be a plot of land. They take over, and that's when they then install things on that land. Security systems, surveillance, fences, barriers, barracks, watchtowers, whatever, right? They build on that land or under that land once they own it. Why would the military place high-end equipment or deep secretive stuff on public land? Even if it is out of sight, right? Even if it is out of sight, why would they have that stuff out there on public land to begin with? Because when you look at Area 51, at least from what I'm aware of and other people, if you cross, the line, you cross one of the gates, even if it's unmanned, and you walk over that line, you can get in trouble. And depending on how far you go, much more serious things can happen to you, right? You're encroaching onto their land, which they own, and that land which has been built on with time. Before that, or in other situations, I mean, does that make sense to people, right? if you got the military and they've got very important things, classified equipment, entranceways, normally they would make sure to have some kind of security, surveillance or prevention from people getting too close to it. Why would they have an unmanned cave entrance with an access denial system and just leave it on public land? It just seems a bit reckless and silly. Unless the military are thinking, oh, well, nobody's going to come across this in the desert. Why not just take over the land to begin with before Kenny Veach even set out there? Does that make sense? It's just weird. It's weird adding things to the environment publicly, well, which the public can access, adding important sensitive stuff onto that land, and then thinking, oh, I think we've been compromised. We best take the land. We best, just land takeover. It just seems out of order, like in the wrong sync. You would buy the land or you would take over the land and then you would develop on it or underneath it, not before. That seems a bit silly. Does anyone agree? Because roughly speaking, where Kenny Veach found the M cave, there's still a bit of distance from there till the restricted border, the military land. There's a few miles in between, so, you know, I don't know how else I can put it. It's quite self-explanatory, to be honest. Anyway, number 7. Oh, pie. Why did a pie, that's going to trigger some people, elder, tell me in emails that she had never heard of Kenny and knew nothing about the military takeover attempt when there were pictures and videos of her addressing that very issue? I have no clue there. So, this individual, this elder, in a previous video, did they talk about Kenny Veach? Besides that military land proposal, did they talk about Kenny Veach being missing out there? Is that exactly true? Well, I mean, all I can say is when Sean Horlacher went out into the desert area and the, DNWR, the park rangers, and Sean tried contacting them and telling them about, do you know about Kenny Veach and the caves, or there's things out there, the cover-ups, and those people at the DNWR were kind of like acting like scarecrows, clueless. Oh, we don't know about any of that. I guess that's not allowed. Oh, but not actually taking anything up, not really taking any direct action either, right? I mean, maybe they do know stuff, but they can't talk about. Is that the same with this elder, which Jeff Clark reached out to? But maybe in the eyes of some people out there, if others can say, well, if this is said and that's said, well, where's your proof? We need actual proof to believe it. That could be flipped onto here. There could be viewers that say, okay, Jeff Clark has an email about this. Where's the proof? So there's that just to highlight there. But just my opinion of the situation, right? My opinion. If the individual has openly talked about these issues and these things going on in the area in the past, such as Kenny's disappearance, but then when confronted directly about it, they play the goldfish card and have a memory loss, it just seems a bit weird. It does appear that they're hiding something and they're in on it and involved. But their IQ must be low if they publicly outright talked about it in the first place, and then in a private conversation, they act like it never happened. That is a bit silly, right? Bit of a low IQ move, to be honest, if that's the case. Now, question number 8. If it was staged, the hike, Kenny's, for a hoax, why pick such a difficult hike when no one in 2014 would have known the difference? Why add weight such as a gun and a tripod if it was all staging for a hoax? Well, the bit about the firearm, Kenny supposedly didn't take as much equipment, didn't take as much weight when he went the very first time round, when he supposedly came across the cave. But then when trying to relocate it, he felt he needed to be more prepared and more confident, so then he could explore it. hence why he took more equipment. On his second hike, I can understand taking a firearm because the first time round he said he was scared and he didn't have one, so he needed it for protection. As for the tripod, as clunky and as big as it was needed in a way to record himself and set up his intro video, I guess, because the first time round he didn't have a camera with him because none of it he wasn't anticipating to come across the cave. But I guess what I would say is, why did Kenny Veach need a tripod? As long as you've got a camera, that's all you need, right? I mean, you saw the giant tripod that Kenny had. I think it's a bit too big and heavy. You can get tiny tripods. You can get small tripods. Why didn't Kenny do that? Maybe it's because the only tripod he had was a big one, and because he was using a camera, not a phone, to record his videos. There's that to take in mind. I mean, I use a tripod with my phone, but the tripod is small and lightweight. But really, what was used more, the tripod or the firearm on Kenny's second hike? Probably the tripod. Yeah, I'll probably say the tripod. We never saw him use the firearm because he didn't need to, but it was for protection. I mean, there's been other hikers since that have gone out there with a firearm, right? But I do understand what Jeff Clark is getting at here, adding on from the theory of what other people have said in the past. If Kenny was supposedly going out there on his final hike, right, and it's fake, pretending to be out there, you know, why do you need a firearm? I mean, there is some key points, to be honest. Let me just move my tripod, it's a bit in the way. I mean, at least, let's just work backwards at least. From Kenny's second hike, okay, his first recorded hike, but his second journey out there. The purpose of the firearm, for protection. The camera, the purpose to record it, the hike and the cave as proof to the people online, okay? So that second hike appeared to be somewhat genuine, but there are mistakes made along the way on his hike and his behaviour which would make you question some things at least. But more so here, we're talking directly about his final hike, his unrecorded one. If it was a fake hike, why was his firearm taken with him? If Kenny Veach wasn't planning on actually hiking out there, why take a firearm with you? I understand that. Is there any way we can work in between and negotiate? Is there a very small chance that Kenny did genuinely hike out there with the correct equipment and then realised, you know what, I'm not getting anywhere, I've had enough, I'll leave some stuff behind and move on with my life? There's different ways of looking at it, okay? I mean, there's some key questions by Jeff Clark here, right? Do I need to read it again? On the basis the final hike was a hoax. Why do that difficult hike? Right, well, let me at least answer that part of the question at least. Why would Kenny pick that hike specifically to do if he was hoaxing it, staging it? So you would go down Joe May Road, park up, and then go up Joe May Canyon up to the mine shaft. That takes 3 to 4 hours to do, right? Why would Kenny spend 3 to 4 hours walking up to the mine shaft just to fake his hike? Seems a bit far-fetched, does it? I guess it depends what lengths Kenny was willing to go to, right? It really depends what length he was willing to go to. You know, like what I've said in the past, if that's a form of negotiation, right? I've suggested that it could have been staged, the hike, right? And he only went up to the mine shaft and then turned back. I mean, his scent did lead up there and it did end there. You'd think that maybe he double backed on himself, hence why possibly staging the hike. I don't think Kenny would have staged the hike and done the entire hike loop, right? I don't think that. Is there any possibility that that could have happened though, in the eyes of some people out there? No, because if you was to fake the hike, you would have planned it before you actually go out there or just as soon as you get there. You know, if Kenny Veach did the entire hike, didn't find the cave and thought, you know what, screw this, I'll fake my disappearance and I'll benefit that way, then it would mean you've done the whole hike loop, you've done 10 hours, or however long it takes, 11 miles, and then you spend another 3 to 4 hours going all the way back around just to the mine shaft to drop an item off because you forgot to drop it off when you first got there on the original hike route on the day. Yeah, it just doesn't seem practical. It seems a bit silly, to be honest. So if it's staged, the hike by Kenny, I think he would have only gone up to the mine shaft and then turned back. Could he have a change of heart, a change of thoughts once he made it to the mine shaft? Under other circumstances, maybe, and that's what made him possibly turn back. As said, if the scent went on further, then we could look at it from a different perspective. If Kenny Veach was reported missing sooner than later, we could have got a different perspective and a different lead. Unfortunately, we don't have that, and we never will. So that's a shame. Now, the only reason why I think Kenny Veach would pick a difficult hike route like that place, Jeremy Canyon, to stage a hike, stage a hoax, would be because he's done it before, and that's where the cave supposedly is. If you're trying to create a mystery, you want a form of accuracy and consistency. If the story keeps changing and switching, people are probably going to not tune in and probably turn off and then get confused. So like with a story and a plot, you know, a bit of groundwork, some foundations, there's a direction, isn't there, to a story, to an outcome. And if Kenny Veach was trying to create a story or create a mystery, long-term planned or spur of the moment, I think it would have been in the place he started in, the place he supposedly found the cave in the area. If Kenny Veach went out there in the Mojave Desert and said, oh, I found the cave, and then his final hike, he ended up heading to Paris, and that's where he was last seen, staging a disappearance. I mean, it's just two completely different areas. It just doesn't quite link. It's a bit weird. So for that consistency, for that belief, to truly convince people that you've gone back out there searching for that cave you originally found, you ought to be going to the same area as you claim it was found in originally, just to convince people. That's what I would say, at least. You don't have to do the full hike. Just go up to the mine shaft. But would it have been easier for Kenny Veach if he was to stage his hike? He could have just driven down Joe May Road, parked up, dropped some items on the ground, left his vehicle behind, and then walk back to the highway to be picked up. Even that would be less less of a chore compared to parking up down Jeremy Road, then 3 to 4 hours walking up to the mine shaft and back. I think that's what was mentioned in the past, right? Was it 3 to 4 hours from the vehicle to the mine shaft, or 3 to 4 hours there and back? If it's only 3-4 hours one way, wow, that does seem a bit impractical. Right, anything else here? What's this? Why make it a difficult hike when no one back then would have known the difference? Well, I think people would have noticed the difference if you compare the footage. I mean, look at Really Robin. That's a good example. Robin, roughly in the same area, but in a completely different canyon. And like you, Jeff Clark, you did pick up on that, and it took some time to work out, but you did pick up on it. That, this looks different. This looks like a different area. If Kenny Veach did the same thing, but completely in a different area, I think people would bother to care and would pick up on it, even in 2014, right? Anything else? Why add the weight? Why take extra items with you if you're faking a hike? To make it more realistic? But then again, if you're not going to record yourself, then there's no proof. do you know what? Is there a tiny chance? And it is pushing it, but I'm gonna be honest. Is there a small possibility that Kenny Veach did stage the hike? That he did take a camera with him for taking photos, as Sharon Pilgrim stated in the past, even though another time she said he didn't take any cameras, but he did, because one's missing from his house. And the phone as well could have been used for video recording, you never know. What am I getting at here? Did Kenny Veach try doing something he did in his second hike, recording himself, documenting himself out there, where you could visibly see his firearm, his tripod, and other items with him? But this time round, he left his camera, he left his other items out there, scattered about. Might be a bit far-fetched, but I'm just trying to put it into perspective, right? Because if Kenny did not take any form of recording equipment at all, right? But he still went out there fully equipped, he's got no way of proving what he looked like or what items he had on him at that point in comparison to his second hike, what we see on his channel video, right? If you were genuinely going out there to stage... Well, actually, no, do you know what? To be honest, let me just add one more thing in. I'll just add in a counterpoint, Jeff Clark, okay? When I think about it now, yeah, I understand what you're getting at, Jeff Clark. You go out of your way to have a firearm and have it holstered on the side. It's going to rub. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's not pleasant. But sometimes in life, you got to go through discomfort in order to protect yourself. And that applied to Kenny Veach at some point, maybe. But if you're going out there with no intention of actually hiking and you're just faking it, do you really need those additional extra details with you? And if you're not even going to record yourself as proof, then do you really need it on you, right? On top of that discomfort, covering 3 to 4 miles, not 3 to 4 miles, 3 to 4 hours on foot with the holster and getting up to the mine shaft, is it really worth it? I guess I do understand what Jeff Clark is getting at there. But then again, as for the tripod, well, I don't think Kenny Veach did take a tripod with him on his final hike. So with Jeff Clark mentioning the tripod here, it seems like Jeff Clark is questioning if Kenny faked his hike like a hoax on his recorded one then. Well, I'll need to get to that point in a second, but let me just refer back to the gun holster. Supposedly, the gun's missing. Kenny's firearm was missing from his home, so it's presumed that he took it with him. And you add one with another with the narrative in the background, mental health, ending one's life. But there's no proof of his body being found, so there's not enough evidence there. But you can take an item with you, right, which would be deemed as uncomfortable, such as a gun and holster. But you don't have to wear it around your belt, around your waist. What I just want to add in as an alternative, Kenny Veach's backpack was taken from the looks of it and what's been worded. He took the backpack with him. What could have been in the backpack? Additional items, the firearm, right? So, yeah, on his second hike, he took his firearm with him and he had it holstered on his side in case he needed to use it. Uncomfortable or not, it was done for genuine reasons. On his final hike, unrecorded, he could have took it with him on top of staging and hoaxing a hike. But he didn't have to wear it. He could have just had it in his backpack, right? And by having that firearm missing from the house, it kind of proves that he went out there. And it also proves, if that's what he wanted, a form of misdirection by the suggestion of suicide. Kenny Veach, could have staged his hike, but furthermore, he could have staged a fake suicide, right? That's one way of looking at it. I mean, what's another way? You could have a big woolly coat. You've wore it in the past. You're going back out there to fake a hike and you're taking the coat as proof to say that you've gone out there. Why would you wear it if you weren't intending on using it properly and it was really uncomfortable and hot out there. It just seems like a waste of time going to such great lengths and efforts to try and convince people. Well, who said anything about wearing it on that specific hike? You could put it in your backpack. You could tie it around your waist so you don't have to feel uncomfortable. And then you could dump it somewhere out there as evidence. Now, in terms of Kenny's firearm, it's missing from his house. It's not been found in the desert. So it must still be on Kenny Veach, dead or alive, right? So if you want to look for the firearm, you probably have to find Kenny too. Goes hand in hand. So Kenny could have taken his firearm, not directly for the hike, but taken it away from the building, his house, to make it seem like he may have used it for suicide when he didn't. That's one way of looking at it, right? So on top of staging a hike, staging disappearance, staging possible end of life. But to refer back to this point here about the tripod, well, Jeff Clark must be referring to the recorded hike on Kenny's channel, his second hike. Now, for most part of it, I've never really mentioned that Kenny staged his hike to that extent on his second hike. I've only mentioned that he could have staged his hike on his final one, his final journey out there, the unrecorded hike, right? To make people believe he went out there as proof and reinforce it, never returned back, to be able to lay low and move on elsewhere. That's what I was pointing out. I don't remember really hearing many people talk about his October hike, his video on his channel. I don't really remember people saying he faked or staged that one. I mean, the only thing I can think of, maybe in the past when I've mentioned about, was Kenny Veach completely in the wrong area? And it was a form of misdirection. Not staging or faking a hike as in going missing, but staging and faking the true location and wrapping it in a form of misdirection by claiming it's over here when it's actually over there. On that basis, then why would you take those items with you? Well, all I can say to that, on top of the tripod point by Jeff Clark, is maybe Kenny Veach was confused himself. There's the only other way I can word it, right? If we're talking about his second hike, the October one, the hike before the final one, when he was able to make it back safely, why go to that level? Why go to that effort in taking all that equipment with you if you're aware that the cave's not even in that area? As I said, my point is, maybe he genuinely thought it was in that area, but it wasn't. Maybe he did get confused. I mean, if Kenny Veach, because let's refer back to Jeff Clark's earlier question, if Kenny Veach is capable of getting the locations wrong, misnaming them, and not even naming other areas, mistakes like that can be made on top of the fact that he's done hiking for so long and he's been out there before, and that he still needs a map to know the distance and time when he's already done it. If he can make mistakes like that, yet being an experienced hiker, then anything's possible, right? Does that make sense? If he got too excited or his mind started wandering, could he have gone in a completely wrong direction? He got too carried away. Is there a small chance and possibility that on his second hike, when he did push himself too much and didn't drink enough water, did he become dehydrated, exhausted, and confused and disorientated? Is that a possibility? As said, Jeff Clark's question, which I misread to begin with, seems to be aimed at his October hike, not his November hike. Kenny's November hike, firearms supposedly taken. Why? If it's staged. Well, he didn't have to wear it. He could have just put it in his backpack, right? To make it seem like he went out there. To make it seem like he ended his life when he didn't. You don't have to wear it. You can have it in your backpack so you don't go through the discomfort. But because Jeff's mentioned about the discomfort, as we saw ourselves or how it appeared, well, that we can only refer to that in his second hike, his October one. So Jeff Clark's question is about the October hike on Kenny's channel. And to be honest, that hike kind of seemed somewhat genuine. But if in the wrong location, Kenny may have been confused and not in the right frame of mind at the time when making decisions. That's all I can think of at this moment in time. If it was a form of misdirection, then that cave must be very important to Kenny then. Would Kenny Veach be considered a gatekeeper? Not literally. Like, if Kenny did actually find something, okay, yeah, he tells people online about it, but does he really want other people finding his secret, his mystery? Does he really want that, or does he want it all to himself? That's like an alternative discussion, okay? But I do think, all I'll say is with Jeff Clark, I do agree about the tripod, the size, the weight, very unnecessary, when for most part of it, Kenny Veach did not use the tripod, only at the start of his video. Some people did suggest, though, well, maybe he used his tripod if he was going to enter into the cave, but to be honest, why leave the camera outside? Shouldn't you take it in with you? If you're trying to prove what's inside it, there's no point leaving the camera outside, walking into the cave, coming back out and then saying, oh, I found the secret, I know what's in there, but not showing it to the camera. Well, that's pointless. Anyway, let's just move on to the next question. We've spent enough time on number 8. Number 9. If it was a hoax, for what reason thousands of people go bankrupt every year without staging a decade-long disappearance over it? It doesn't always have to be money-related problems. It could be other factors, internal stuff going on. Who knows, right? I'm not going to know everything about Kenny, but it doesn't always have to be related to money as to why someone may disappear. It could be a social reason. It could be to do with certain family members. Things can happen. Other stuff, other background, conflict, resistance, problems. It's not always money problems. But that's one of the factors which could have added on. If Kenny Veach had numerous problems or issues going on, the money issue could have been the cherry on the top, which was the breaking point of, right, I want to start again, I need a fresh life. Just based on that as an idea. As for the bit about staging a decade-long disappearance, I don't think it would have taken a decade or long-term planning to fake a disappearance or stage it, right? All Kenny had to do was talk online about going back out there and even telling certain family members, let's just say, going out there, few hours, drop a few items here and there, and then leave. Then move on. Is it that easy to fake a disappearance in the US? If people say it's not easy, okay, I understand, then I would understand that probably it does take more planning. Once again, I'm not an expert with this because I've not gone missing, right? I've not staged a disappearance. But those that have, how much planning is really needed? It depends how you lay low because, yeah, some people of... How would I put it? Right. When it comes to people like YouTubers, well-known individuals and somewhat popular, they might go to more effort in creating a mystery or them disappearing because they know that because they're well-known, wherever they go, even if they started a new life, there's a high chance that people will know who they are, right? Kind of like if a celebrity went quiet, moved to Africa, they'll probably still be known. So yeah, they can fake the disappearance, they can pretend to pass away, but if they tried moving to a different country or an area, there's a very high chance that they would be recognised because of who they are, their social contacts and their popularity. Kenny Veach at the time was more so just a normal everyday person. So if Kenny went missing, not as many people are going to know him, right, after. Some people could argue and say, well, surely by now he would have been spotted. Well, technically, that supposedly has been the case, on and off. whether you truly believe in it or not. You could say that if, let's just put it this way, if Kenny Veach was found out, okay, video footage, interviews, you could argue and say, well, Kenny Veach planned his disappearance, but not long term, hence why he was found by now. Why would he be found by now if that was the case? Well, at the time of going missing or staging the disappearance, you probably wouldn't expect things to blow up. At the time, Kenny Veach was a nobody for most part of it. He's not a celebrity. He's not a very well-known individual at the time, but he is more well-known now, right? Maybe Kenny didn't anticipate that. He thought things would have just blown away and been brushed off the shoulders, and yet it really did intensify, and more people know who Kenny Veach is now, or Snakebit McGee. Most will be familiar with his face and what he looks like. So surely by now he would have been found by someone if he did start a new life, if he was in a different country or a different state. Surely by now someone would have gone up to him and approached or recorded him and say, hey, look, I found him. Kenny could have, underestimated what happened in the future. He wouldn't have known. He may have thought things would have blown under the rug, and yet it didn't. But if in between Kenny changed or altered his appearance, well, then obviously it's harder to recognise that individual. And that is available at hand. Are we saying that Kenny turned into a woman? No. But there could be changes to the face, add-ons or removals. I'm not talking about like removals lower down. I'm like removal of eyebrows or hair. Just things to make you look different to how you once looked. The only thing that Kenny has as an advantage is his age, right? He's 50 plus years old now, and if he manages it longer, obviously he gets older, if he's still alive, and, as you age, you can change, you can look different, right? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If Kenny Veach aged significantly, or his facial features, face changed a fair bit, maybe he wouldn't need to hide, maybe he wouldn't need to change anything about his appearance. I'm just looking at it in that sense. I just think that, on the basis or the theory that it was staged, the disappearance, I don't think Kenny Veach would have planned it like extra long term. I think it might have been short, medium term, and then onwards going with the flow on that theory. Right. Anything else? Number 10. If it was suicide, why make such a production out of it? Stating, no one will ever find me. Doesn't jibe with posting videos showing everyone where you like to hike and leaving your truck right there as well. And as well, taking the phone with you. Yeah. If it truly was suicide, then he wouldn't take anything with him which would lead to clues or traces to his potential spot or area. Yeah. So, to be honest, you could work around that and say, because he took items with him, then it goes against the whole suicide, no one will find me. If you're intentionally doing that, then you wouldn't take the items with you. But because he did, it's less likely suicide. And more likely, higher chances could have been either staged, faked, or a genuine hike. So, kind of going back and forth with some of these, yeah. Number 11. Why have we had so many different versions and statements from Red Rock Search and Rescue over the years, and why can't we see the photos of the truck, cell phone, coins, or even the hiking routes they searched? I don't know about that, but it's a very critical point mentioned by Jeff Clark. Search and Rescue, Red Rock Search and Rescue, is that like a volunteer group or actually official people? Because if it's like pure authority, formal, then maybe there's procedures which they can't share. But then again, I wonder if Susan Veach would be able to get a hold of key information, photos of the truck, the cell phone from Search and Rescue. I wonder if Susan Veach is able to do that. I guess we'll see. Look into that maybe. Oh, I think there's one more question. Where is his wallet and ID? Was that taken with him on his hike, yes or no? Personally, I don't know. The only thing that was said that inside of Kenny Veach's truck, these items weren't found. There was nothing found of interest in his truck, right? The only thing you could argue and say, if you can't find the firearm, it's likely because the firearm's on Kenny Veach, wherever he is. Maybe that can apply to his wallet as well. Normally, a person's phone would be on them too, right? But that was left behind at the mine shaft. So why wasn't the wallet and ID left at the mine shaft too? Is it because he just didn't take it with him in the first place? Don't know, because as for the talk about his house and what was found or what wasn't, Sharon Pilgrim never mentioned anything about the wallet or ID. It was just all about the firearm. So if Susan Veach is present, just let me know your thoughts about Kenny's wallet and ID. What happened to it? If you do know, feel free to answer. That'd be appreciated. So all in all, hopefully that kind of, I don't know, answered some areas. I can imagine probably not good enough for Jeff Claw because it's just my thoughts, okay? But still, the purpose of this video, to spread awareness of these important questions. So at some point, hopefully, they can be truly answered and even possibly proven with evidence, because that's what's needed, right? We'll see what happens next, of course. If there are any updates, I'll try and cover them. There's some comments in recent time about the break-in healing store second time around. If this time, I'll try and look into that. I've just got to tick some boxes off the list when it comes to video ideas, and I'll be able to focus in a lot clearer. So feel free to share this video if you want, just to spread the awareness of the case and the questions too, and hopefully there are some answers with time. But for now, thanks for watching. See you next time. Goodbye. Good night for now.